Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And we're doing another album analysis. And my two friends, who are musicians themselves, Alex and Jim, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
Alex is a working musician. I think it's a little generous calling me. I'm more of an enthusiast at this point, I think.
Well, at
that's
least you can
right.
play an instrument.
I'm
Uh,
playing in
so
Asbury Park every day.
There's a piano on the other side of this wall. Does that count?
I I learned how to play Take Me Home Country Roads. Like I can play that riff on a guitar.
What?
Um and that was the extent of my playing. So I was trying to teach myself how to play guitar my freshman year of college, and I didn't really put enough of the work in. It's okay. I just watched a bunch of
You were
movies
not
instead.
alone, Shane. You were not alone.
But I just love music a lot, which is why I think this is a fun segment we get to do here and taking on an album and really taking a nice deep dive into it. And I picked this time and one of my favorite modern bands because, like, I don't listen to a whole lot of bands from basically like the 2000s on. So, but I do love Muse. And I was excited to pick Black Holes and Revelations, one of their most iconic albums. This album just has so many of their like really beloved hits from their early. I feel like once you get you know what the hell is the name of the album, there's like a very distinct divide in their music, where it's like past this album into the future's been very much like they've got really mainstream, and this one is still like that, like great early Muse kind of feel and everything. And there's tons of great songs on here. But I guess
Yeah.
let's start with your general thoughts on the album. So, Alex, what were your thoughts?
The production of it is just fantastic. I think anybody who's looking to get into recording and sound engineering should listen to this record. It is just a dynamite record in terms of like the dynamics, the different types of instrumentation, blending like rock and metal with electronica is
Mhm.
nuts on this record. There's like a couple of places where I can't tell the difference between the guitar and if it's just like a synthesizer that they ran it through or both. It's really, really cool. Um, I didn't do a deep dive, and that's why I look forward to seeing what both of you say, especially you, Shane, about the lyrics. But some of it felt really relevant. The themes felt really relevant, even though it didn't necessarily sound like it was incredibly deep, you know, but it was very something, whatever he's saying is obviously very powerful. And he is very much on that Freddie Mercury level of like power. I kept every time I would listen to him, I go, Freddie Mercury, Freddie Mercury. I like there's something very like powerful about what he's gunning for. So great production, great vocals, really kind of hits you in the face. And yeah, very cool. The only thing is that I think the reason why I don't go back to them is because they are always in danger of being overproduced. It's like they have like really milked it on every song. They've gone like you could tell they put a lot of work, maybe too much work into it. So I think that's the only snobby, pretentious criticism that I have is that it's over.
I had a friend of mine that complained that they were too whiny. And I'm
I,
like,
right. Yeah. I used to get that criticism when I used to do metal. I used to get that criticism. Yeah, because of the high pitched vocals.
well, and also, I think thematically too, which also, like,
Yeah,
they're complaining about pretty ballad things on this album, but
sure.
just saying there because, like, well, I'll get to that. But Jim, what were your general thoughts on the album?
I got a bunch of thoughts. I'm over here trying to put some of my notes into a cohesive order. Didn't listen to Muse a lot back in the day. I had a good friend who was really into Radiohead, and he liked Muse a lot. Um, so, like in no particular order, I did write down a bunch of bands that I kind of heard in Muse in their sound. Radiohead's definitely there. I think they wear a lot of their influences on their sleeve. Like there's one song that sounds just like an Audio Slave song. We can touch on that later.
Yeah, yeah.
There's one song that sounds like a Depeche Mode song reworked. Um, I'm curious if this was supposed to be like a rock opera or a concept album, or if there was a comic or a graphic novel or some story that went along with it. The songs are really close to segueing right one into the other. Like this was meant to be an album. You know, there's a cohesive through line for all this. And some of the songs that I didn't love or that I skipped the third time through might be a lot more interesting to me if there was a theatrical element to it. Obviously, their sound just by itself is kind of theatrical in the way that I was thinking of Coheed and Cambria. Like I know they have a whole
Yeah.
series of graphic novels that go along with their work, or like Lord Huron, for example, who I didn't really pay much attention to before like past couple years, but I'd be interested to know if there was like some kind of a fictional world that this was kind of written in. I agree that it sounds very relevant, but like if this was 2006, right? So this was like
Bush.
peak Iraq, yeah, exactly. Peak empire of George Bush, right?
Mhm.
So I think the fact that there's a conservative power back in, like we've come back around to that now, that might have something to do with it. But it might be that some of the themes are just of our time, you know, and it might not have to much to do with political cycles at all. Okay, so I think I didn't get into Muse much back in the day because they were really polished and produced. I wasn't really into the synthy stuff when I was in like high school and college. I wrote the 80s off entirely in high school. I was very snobby when it came to the 80s because I just really hated synthesizers. And it took me a while to get to a place where I could listen to electronica and rock in the same place. To me, this album sounds like they were going for a really broad audience. Like, for example, what's the second song on the album? Starlight, right?
Yep.
Never loved that song, but I think like if we can talk more in depth about that song if you want. But to me, it sounds like they were trying to write a radio hit, and they did. Like they nailed it. In the past week, I didn't realize Muse plays some heavy music. I didn't realize they go as hard as they do. Just not on this record, really. Like for example, I'd never listened to Micro Cuts before this past week. Wow. I really like that song, and I'd like to hear more of like that operatic kind of stuff from them. I have a few standout tracks that I didn't hear before, but I find myself liking the beginning and the end of the album a lot, which makes me kind of curious about what kind of story they were telling with it.
Yeah, it's I just brought up their discography to reinforce my point from earlier. I feel like their first four albums, Showbiz, Origin of Symmetry, Absolution, and Black Holes and Revelations, were like this was them leading up to this point, this album. And then, albums like The Resistance and The Second Law, which the Second Law is when they invented Muse Step, when they started injecting dubstep into some of their songs and stuff like that, which some of that went over better than others, for sure. But I've been listening to Muse a lot. And I really love their music. Some of their albums go in very different kinds of directions. Like Simulation Theory that came out in 2018 is very much like this sounds like they just listened to a bunch of new wave from the 80s and really leaned into it. Their 2015 album Drones is where they get really heavy and they strip down a lot some of the songs, and there's it's a lot less like listening to this album feels very like ethereal and otherworldly and stuff like that. Like I'm listening to something from like a science fiction story. Like, and some of their work, that album Drones, is really stripped back and really heavy. This definitely feels like, even when, because like they're mixing pianos and they're mixing all this electronic music, and some of their songs have some really heavy guitar on this album. And I it's an interesting mix of things. And I don't know, I don't know if it's the Rush fan in me and the prog rock fan of me, but like this really does feel like a lot of that. And you could definitely tell like they probably listen to a lot of Pink Floyd in terms of just like soundscaping, because this album feels like there was a couple of songs I specifically wrote like this is a soundscape. Like even right off the bat with Take a Bow feels very
Yeah.
hypnotic and like a sarcastic preaching at you, where it's just like cast a spell on the country you run. And it's like very much like, and I think to your point earlier is like there's a lot of relevant themes, but they're also very heavy-handed. It's like there's not a whole lot of subtlety in what they're trying to say in their songs, but like the whole term "take a bow" basically it's like, hey, look what you did, take a bow. Aren't you proud of this?
Okay.
And like that's the kind of vibe that I get from that song. And like obviously this was very much in like the heart of, well, I guess the tail end of Bush being president, and bands like Muse and Disturbed made a lot of music very critical of the Bush administration and the war on terror and stuff like that, because you get that like that kind of vibe, and there's a common thematic thread of resistance through a lot of their albums, and like call for rebellion and resistance against things. And you hear that in a lot of the songs on here. But I think just from the start, like Take a Bow, such like this strange, like echoey soundscape, and it's kind of hypnotic and pulls you into the album. And I think it's a really interesting way to start off the album and set the tone for like this is what you're getting into for sure.
Hmm.
I like Take a Bow a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah, and Glorious and Assassin. I think those would be my three standouts. I was surprised to see on the Wikipedia, no, the Spotify page. I thought Knights of Sidonia would be number one, and it's not.
Mhm.
The most popular song of theirs on Spotify, I mean, is Supermassive Black Hole,
Mm.
Mhm.
and like not even why do I keep forgetting Starlight is the name of the
Starlight.
song, right?
Well,
I thought I
is
thought that would be
definitely.
top of the list too, and it's Supermassive Black Hole is actually considerably more streamed than either of those other two, which surprised me.
I think it has one of the most unique sounds on the album, because it's like it's considerably heavier than a lot of the other songs on the album Supermassive Black Hole, and it just comes in like thumping at you from the start. And um I'm not exactly sure, as I'm not a musician, but exactly what instruments making. I'm assuming it's a mix of guitar and stuff like that, where it's just like that big thumping beat through the whole entire song that comes roaring in there. And there's also some really great um like vocalizations that Bellamy does on Supermassive Black Hole, which seems very interesting because like the music's so heavy and he's just like kind of feeling like he's showing off Like I wish I could hold ooze that long singing
Yeah,
a song and stuff like that. Which that's the thing. He's an incredible singer,
he
and
is. Yeah.
he I think his voice adds a lot to this, and he could do the trying to express the vibe where it's just like you feel like you're kind of like floating away in some of the songs, and like his voice feels it's like just floating up to the sky subtly. And then I feel like he could also do like when he gets angry and aggressive, it like it has that kind of punch to it. I don't
Yeah.
know if you get that as much on this album. There's definitely some other like
Maybe on a song like Assassins, you know.
yes.
Yeah. But yeah, no, Supermassive Black Hole, you guys are right. It's heavy, but it's like dancey at the
Yeah.
same time. And there's the operatic thing going on in it. It's a very, it's it's a strange song. It's very unique. So,
I
yeah.
appreciate the weirdness for sure.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I
I
think
and
it's a guitar. The that kind of thumping
Mm.
rhythmic thing going on. I think it's a guitar, but it is sometimes hard to tell.
it sounds like, but it's got like a fuzz pedal
Very
on it,
fuzzy,
right?
yeah.
Very
And
fuzzy.
sometimes the synth. I mean, even there's parts I couldn't point to where, but like where voice and synthesizer and guitar all kind of meld, and
Yeah,
I would be able to pull them apart, you know?
it's
All
wild.
becomes one.
Yeah,
Really
And
cool.
singularity.
like there's one particular lyric in that song, you're the queen of the superficial, how long until you tell the truth?
Yeah.
And I'm really wondering, it's like, who's the supermassive black hole we're getting stuck in?
Oh, okay, okay. In Starlight, I I took issue, I guess, a little bit with the lyrics sounding like they are really profound and big ideas, and actually not doing a whole lot with it. Supermassive Black Hole, I was kind of confused about where, yeah, what that was all about. So the supermassive black hole is a shallow woman. Is that
Well,
what you're
because
getting out of this song?
they're because one of the repetitive lyrics is you set my soul alight. So like
Yeah.
obviously it's kind of like you're speaking to somebody that they're doing something to you. But then also very like, why you keep lying to me? Why are you so fake? And it definitely feels like what I'm gathering, it definitely seems like it's being some kind of metaphor for some kind of dynamic or relationship in terms of like, I feel like all of us at some point in our lives have felt like we've got trapped in a supermassive black hole and you're just like desperately trying to get out. And it
Mm.
gets very aggressive. Like this is one of the songs where it has like that screamy, like gravelly when towards the end is like the supermassive black hole. And coming out of that, just like,
That's Black Mo. That's how I
yeah,
super massive Black Mo.
that's exactly what Alex and I were talking about before we started recording.
That's
But
just what I always heard. I don't know why.
but like Jim, to your point with like Starlight definitely feels like they were trying to make a single and with broad appeal. And they even dropped the title of the album in it.
That's right. And I love that, by the way.
Mhm.
I love it. I like it when bands do that.
Well, and like that, like that point in the song, like there's a lot of feeling that you get up to like that every time they come back to that lyric in the chorus.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's a very well placed rhyme. I dig that. I dig that. Our hopes and expectations, black holes and revelations. It's very well placed.
Do you guys have a favorite track on the album? Starlight was definitely the one that I heard the most, and I don't know why. Probably radio.
Hmm.
That would be my first guess. I know
Uh,
Knights of Sidonia was on Guitar Hero.
Yes,
which is why I thought
that's
that would
how I
be.
heard of them. That was the first time I heard of them. Yeah.
Uh-huh, yeah.
I can't help but not pick Knights of Sidonia only because like it's channeling this like very distinct space western kind of feel, and you even have like the trumpets that come in, and it sounds like we're getting some mariachi music that's like infused into it a little bit, and it's just you hear the it's such an interesting clash with the neighs of horses and the lasers at the
Yeah.
beginning, and you're just like, what are we getting into here? And then it has like that weird like that sound like the and then it kicks into the doom 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 doom. It's like channeling like Ghost Riders in the Sky a little bit in
Yeah.
terms of that kind of like Western feel of a
Yeah.
song in it.
I don't know if it comes out of left field, but once again, this is where like for a song like that, I make the Queen comparison again. Like it reminds me of the type, but like
Mhm.
21st century. Like it sounds very, nobody else sounds like that. And they did something not only different, but it was even different for them. It was a unique song for them to do. Um, it's not my favorite song of the album, but I have to tell a quick St. Bonaventure story. I haven't spoken to this man in a long time. His name was Brian. I don't remember what his last name was, but everybody called him the Jumper because he would jump from the bottom of the stairs at Plasman Hall, I think was the name of it, and he would somehow or another, he was not an athlete, but this kid for whatever reason had like this god ability to jump from the bottom to the top of the stairs of Plasman Hall. And so he developed a reputation, and people at like who were like in their classrooms would like gather at the window and they would watch him jump from the bottom to the top of the stairs, and he became known as the jumper. Jim, do you remember the jumper?
No, no, I don't remember this guy. I don't know.
Well, you might have, maybe you weren't there yet, but his name was Brian, and his name was the Jumper, and he loved Knights of Sidonia. He loved that
Nice.
song. He flunked out because most of that semester and a half that I knew him, all that kid did was play Guitar Hero in his
He might have
room.
left before I even arrived at school then, yeah.
It's very possible. It's very possible. But he loved that song and he loved that game. And that's how I remember that's the first time I heard the song was watching the Jumper play Guitar Hero to Knights of Sidonia. So when I would go jogging and to that song, I would like imagine him coming out at the end with the Guitar Hero guitar, like playing a solo on the on the game controller. So that was my introduction to Muse.
I there one other little point like musically with like that surf rock riff because it has
Yeah,
like all the beginning like building up, and then you just get the and then it like kicks
yeah,
into that
I know. It's weird.
and
It's a weird song, but it's
then the trumpets come in the
yeah,
and it's just like building all up to that point. And honestly, I didn't really spend a lot of time really listening to the lyrics of this song. Like, you know the lyrics and you sing along, but you don't really think about them. But like this song that's so much fun and going for like this very like genre vibe just throws out, I'll
yeah.
show you how God falls asleep on the job and how we can and how can we win when fools can be kings.
That's a great line.
And you're
Yeah,
just like,
that's a
Yeah,
great
that seemed very relevant
yes, very
as
relevant.
well.
Yes,
I
that
thought it
made me
was interesting what
want
kind
to
of
cover it.
American. Sorry, what'd you say, Alex?
I said I wanted that made me. I was like, shit, I want to cover that now. Like,
Mm,
yeah,
you should. You should. I mean, it does have a very Bohemian Rhapsody feel, like with the there's like the a cappella break, which isn't really
yep.
a cappella. It's him singing like five different harmonies all at once.
Yeah,
yeah,
it sounds like he's like rounding with himself.
And then it kicks into the guitar riff, kind of like Bohemian Rhapsody does. I'd like to think that they are wearing their influences on their sleeves. And they're like, yeah, of course, this is a nod to Freddie Mercury and to Queen and to Bohemian Rhapsody.
Totally.
I thought it was interesting what American influences kind of came through because there's a lot of okay, Pink Floyd, Queen, Depeche Mode. These are all British acts. I thought of Keane a lot. Radiohead, all that's all British. But there's a lot of like surf rock influence or
Mhm.
experimentation. And then, like you said, Knights of Sidonia is obviously like some kind of space western
Mhm.
setting. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I thought it was interesting, kind of how obviously there's a lot of influences. There's a lot of styles that they're playing with. So like the where they choose to put them together, like where the obviously surf rock tone is used for the guitar. I thought that was really interesting. Interesting choices to be made, you know.
Yeah, interesting that they mention on the Wikipedia page of this album of Southern Italian influences. And I'm wondering if it's like the spaghetti
Spaghetti
Western
Western. Yeah.
Hmm.
specifically. Like there's definitely some Morricone
Totally.
vibes going on in here. It's just like if you made a like high tech modern spaghetti Western of Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, this would be the this would be the score to it.
Yeah. It's
But
funny how
like
the surf rock and spaghetti Western stuff ended up marrying somehow, in our culture. I wonder if Tarantino had something to do with that.
I think like because like it's interesting because I automatically thought those like felt like more like Latin and Mexican influences, but I guess like it kind of was just like Southern Italian
I
kind
was
of
thinking
influences.
I was thinking Spanish and North African. Um,
They
I
all
didn't write
float
down the
down
songs.
here.
There are
So there you
several
go.
songs where the drummer goes into a it's not odd for Latin music, but for Western rock music, it's a really odd rhythm that he is hitting the kit to. I think it was like three different songs. And then there's a guitar that sounds kind of flamenco-ish to me.
Mm-mm. On
Um,
Hoodoo
it might be
was
Hoodoo.
the
Yeah.
song right before Knights of Sidonia that I'm like, and like with the first note, I'm like, there's definitely some surf rock and Latin flair going on in this song
Yeah, yeah.
specifically.
So, but it could be, I mean, Southern Italy, that makes sense too. It's a similar, the region of the world, at least, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, towards the end of the album, it felt like they were kind of like leaning into that specific kind of vibe.
Mm.
Because like I'm looking at my notes for the song Hoodoo, and it's just like surf rock, Latin flair, bluesy, jazzy. I'm like, they're all just throwing all kinds of vibes in there for sure. And
Cool.
there's a couple of lines in that song because like Hoodoo was not a song that I paid a whole lot of attention to.
Same here.
Um, like all the other times that I really listened to this album because you have like the big songs like Knights of Sidonia and Assassins and Supermassive Black Hole and Starlight, but like tied to a railroad, no love to set us free. Watch our souls fade away and our bodies crumble. And then I've had recurring nightmares that I was loved for who I am and missed the opportunity to be a better man.
Mm.
And I
Wow.
find that very interesting because it's like we're happy for people to love us for who we are, but like, is that an excuse for us to not be better?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's like, I don't want to pick on Honey Boo Boo, but like, it's like, I'm beautiful just the way I am. Like, if you get too much love for being just the way you are, then you're stunted, right? Like, and I mean, sometimes you need to get punched in the nose just like to remind you what life is all about, right? But like, and not self-reflection to the point where you're like, oh my God, I'm a piece of shit all the time. And every time you make a mistake, you're like,
Mhm.
putting yourself down, but somewhere in between is probably where you want to be because you're still kind of open-minded, you want to learn, and you recognize that trying is needed to like to be better, to do better, to be, or even in certain roles, to be a better whatever, brother, father, husband, etc. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because you could look at it from a musical standpoint too, and a creative standpoint. Because how many bands have we seen become so praised and so beloved that they stop taking chances
Hmm.
and really like settle in? Like, I'm not trying to compare these bands, but I'm bringing this up for a reason. I finally got to watch that documentary they did on Nickelback. Um, Hate to Love Nickelback is the name of the documentary.
Hmm.
And Chad Kroger's like, why would we make songs to please other people when our fans love Nickelback music? We're gonna make them Nickelback music. And I'm like, it is what it is. And it's interesting, having rewatched A Complete Unknown for the Oscars.
Right.
'Cause that whole entire film is about the expectations of a whole entire genre of music and a
Yeah.
whole entire group of people put all their faith on the shoulders of one person and tried to strap shackles on him to be like, you're going to be our folk hero, folk music hero. And Bob Dylan's like, I don't want to play the same goddamn songs the whole rest of my life. Like, I like you could tell, especially how he's portrayed in that film, which you have to take it with a grain of salt because Bob Dylan's a enigma and doesn't want anybody to know who the hell he is. But like the idea of like he's a creative. He doesn't want to do the same old thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting because like this is one thing I will say about Muse is like they take chances, shaking things up album to album, and that's very progressive rock of them.
Yep.
A very progressive rock is to not sound like the same band on every single album,
Hmm.
Right.
um, and
Yeah.
taking different approaches. Like, did I love all the dubstep Muse music? Like I feel like the only song that it really worked for me was Madness, where it's like mad madness, and
I know that song. I know what you're talking about. Thank you.
like that works. And then there's other songs where it's like unsustainable. Well, but I'm like I'm
Yeah.
like they're going full blown dubstep, but like that kind of thing where it's like obviously this is a very human statement of us. To your point, Jim, do we be very overly critical about ourselves and beat us ourselves down? Or do we envelop ourselves in the that positivity that people pass our way and then we close ourselves off to growing and challenging ourselves to grow and be better? And I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting. I did not expect a line that heavy to just come in like one of the more random songs on this album that not a lot of people probably give a whole lot of attention to. So
Yeah. It's true.
that stuck with
Yeah.
me.
No, I think yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Who do kind of grab me more than sorry, I'm pulling up the list again. Soldier's Poem and Invincible for some reason I always tuned out. Like that should
Same.
be
Same here.
I mean it
Yeah.
is a really serious part of the album. And whether like this is focused on Afghanistan or Iraq or some post-apocalyptic space western,
Mm-hmm.
space spaghetti western world, whatever, like a soldier's poem should be like interesting. But I found myself tuning out more during Soldier's Poem and Invincible, and then Hoodoo's what right before my Knights of Sidonia. It's
Yep.
kind of getting towards the end of the album. I found my interest kind of growing again towards the end of the album for some reason.
I think one of the reasons why Soldier's Poem never really connected with me because like I feel like you have to actively try to hear what he's saying with some of the lyrics because it's so soft spoken
Hmm.
and just this somber tone. And like I re-listened to this, like I'll re the first couple of times I listened to the albums we choose, like I listen to them in the car to work. Because I'm just sitting there and just listening to the music. But like last night I sat down, I casted this to my TV and I had my phone next to me and I had the lyrics on Spotify up. And that was probably the first time I really dove into what the hell Soldier's Poem's actually saying. Because generally it's like you have to some of the things you can't even hear because he's so whispery with his vocals on that song. But there's it's very like it's a preachier kind of song because like it's much quieter and somber in tone, and you have like all the piano work and the whispery lyric and like vocals. Like there's no justice in the world, there never was.
This does, the more I think about it, this does sound like um, more real life than fiction. You know, somebody's getting sent away to
Or
the sandbox.
how, how could you send us so far away from home when you know damn well that this is wrong?
Hmm.
Like that definitely seems like specifically talking about, sending off our soldiers to the Middle East and just being like,
Yeah.
here we go. Um, and then Invincible definitely feels like this was just like an anthem to be like, if we stand together, we're invincible. And it just like has that kind of vibe where it's like it has like that marching drum beat and it starts like it basically is just building and building throughout the song leading up to that point. And one thing I did notice on each of their songs, they always crescendo at the very end of the song with like heavier guitars and like riffs and stuff like that and like building up to that point. So a lot of their songs are just consistent build until like payoff at the end of the song.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That one, somebody mentioned sarcasm at the beginning of Shane. I think it was you
Mhm.
talking about take a bow, like a sarcastic.
Mm.
Uh, I I think Invincible is taking the same tone. Like you hear a lot in this country too, but like in Great Britain, it's like keep calm, carry on,
Mhm.
unity. Stand together, whatever. And we take after them too with like the whole "United We Stand" uh,
Mhm.
rhetoric. So I think it works
Going
for
after
both.
Judas Priest. United, united we stand.
I do hear some sarcasm now in Invincible too, for sure. Reminds me a little bit of I don't remember if we talked about Idol's um, song "Great" or not. I don't remember if it was even on the album we talked about, but they have a few songs that kind of take that same tone with um, national unity.
Mhm.
Just like don't think about it, just get in line and do what you're supposed to do, and it'll
Yeah.
make us all better. It'll make us all invincible.
Yeah. Nationalism is always a good theme for sarcasm and cynicism, you know. Um,
It's
yeah.
like, look how great we are. Um, happens a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the thing too, because so much of this album and so much of their music in general is very like rising up, resist. It's like they live all rolled into a bunch of albums and just as heavy handed as they live, but I love both of them. So
That's cool.
like
Yeah.
you have some like a song like City of Delusion, where it's like builds a fortress and shield your beliefs, touch the divine as we fall in line. and justify my reasons with your blood. You will not rest or settle for less until you guzzle and squander what's left. And like obviously like some of these songs are very like biting, attacking the systems that are
Yeah,
around us that we're like a small cog in, and really trying to get that. Which also, City of Delusion was one of the few songs that had like real acoustic guitar on it.
mhm. Right. Oh
It was
wow.
something
Didn't even think about that.
they that one even dabbled a little bit into the horns. I think that was the first song that started using it, and then it kind of that continued as like a music motif for the last couple of songs there, that
Right.
you would hear like the those horns starting to come in. And that's the thing, they used all kinds of instruments on this album that you don't expect. Like I'm not expecting to have a bunch of trumpets rolling into my rock music, but you
Right.
know, it all, I feel like, does it feel a little overproduced? Sure, but like everything so seamlessly just comes together in
Yeah,
exactly like, I feel like this is a fully realized vision and soundscape that they wanted to create and really nailed it for sure.
absolutely. And the thing about overproduced is that's not so much like a criticism of the work as much as it is that's maybe one of the reasons why I don't go back to it as much is because I typically don't seek out those types of recordings, you
Mm,
know. But I like produced stuff, but I like stuff that's raw too, you know. And so it all depends. But there's a lot going on in these every song, you know. It's but yeah, no, but it's not a knock. It's not a knock on their approach and the way they do things, especially not on this record. It's more so just like that's the reason why I don't like go back and listen to it in my car.
mm.
Um, but there's a
It's
lot.
interesting because have either of you listened to Showbiz, their first album?
No.
No.
Because it's like it's this but stripped down. Like it has that aggressive guitar, it has Bellamy's voice and stuff like that. Like it has all those things, and it's much more like a raw, unpolished kind of version of this. It's kind of like you watch like a filmmaker like
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan, where it's like you watch Following, and like you see the Nolan there, but it's much like stripped down. And then this is like Inception.
Uh-huh.
We're
Right.
just like we've
Good.
gotten
That's
to
a good
that point,
comparison.
and then
And
their
I think I
album
like the
after.
early stuff. What's
so
that?
I love Memento. I love Memento. I don't love Inception. Inception is a fun movie. Don't get me wrong. It's a good movie, but I don't love Inception. So it's the same, you know. But I but I do love some of the songs on this record. Well,
Mhm.
the song that popped up for me, and I knew I would talk about it, was it came out 3 years before this. It was a song called Stockholm Syndrome. Um, that's
Yeah,
like a
from that's from their uh what album was that? It was Absolution.
That sounded like progressive metal. That was like
Mhm.
straight out of the Dream Theater early 2000s
Ooh.
progressive metal world. I
Yep.
was like, holy shit, this is nuts, but very different. So they definitely went over lots of different bridges in
Mhm.
their sonic sounds. I just want to get it in there. My favorite song, well, on this record is Map of the Problematique. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know exactly what it's about. Man, some of you guys touched on stuff that's political. It sounds like it's a political song, but then in the beginning, you read the lyrics, it also sounds like it could be about a woman, you know, that stabbed him in the back or something. You know, maybe it's about both, but I just love the emotion of it, and I just really dig. It actually sounds like a Donkey Kong Country song in the beginning, but it like the different once again, the synthesizer, the guitar. What's
Mhm.
what, the different, like the soundscape going on. That's why I like that one the best. That's one of the most unique songs I've heard from them, but very different from the stuff, whatever the hell I heard 3 years before that. You
Mhm.
know?
It's funny because my note to start this was rich soundscape to start with guitar and bass and piano and keyboard and then like
Yeah.
synthesizer because like it really does like you get pulled in and then it's like that guitar threads you through into the rest of the song and there's some heavy rhythm to this one and there's a couple of lyrics that stood out with why can't we see then when we bleed the same
Yeah.
like that kind of well, I guess I can see where it's like if you're thinking about that in a relation standpoint like I'm like I know like what I immediately went to listening to so many of the other songs on this. It's like that idea of like they keep telling us they up
Yeah.
here keep telling us that we should hate each other. We're each other we're hurting each other. We're getting each other's way, but at the end of the day we're the same. And
Yeah.
having that kind of and even just from the beginning something simple like fear and panic in the air just kind of sets that stage of like that paranoia that fear mongering and just building that up and
Mm.
scapegoating.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
This-
like this song too. In it's the build up. I think it's one of my favorite build ups on the album.
Mhm.
Um, but this is also the song that reminds me of Depeche Mode's "Enjoy the Silence." I think it's called. You'll
let's
I,
never heard it.
I'll
I,
fact
I
check
thought
this.
I thought this was the one you were talking about, though.
I don't want to ruin it for you, so don't feel the need to go listen to it right away. So that was distracting, but um, even like the third time through, as it was picking up towards the end, especially that guitar, I like picked up my phone to check what song it was, and I was like, oh yeah, it's this map of the. I wonder why they went with the French. I'm not sure why they made that choice, but it's basically the same word.
Because
Hmm.
it sounded cool.
Problématique.
Les resistance.
I've also, oh, that's that. I mean, that's a great insight, actually. I just finished listening to a lecture series about so usually I use my phone and I listen to Spotify in the car, but the little widget thing that attaches to my car speakers stopped working. So I've been like scrambling for all the CDs that I can find in my car. And I have a history of Hitler's Empire on like 6 discs that I went through this past week.
Oh God.
So I was like prime mode for some dystopian French resistance music
There you
for sure.
go. There
Kim
you
was ready for this album. It's
Yeah.
like we can take it down.
go.
Um, it's very interesting, Alex, that you brought up Absolution, that album, because like Time is Running Out is like one of those Muse songs that like that's one of their best songs from like those early albums and Hysteria and Stockholm Syndrome. Like there's a heaviness. That album is heavy.
Yeah.
And it's not there's not as much flourishings as like the pianos and the horns and all of these things that come in and make this
Yeah.
more complex and more prog rock. That is just like that is some heavy, aggressive kind
Yeah.
of music. And it's interesting because they dabble on some of their albums. Like I listen to The Second Law a lot because of a couple of songs on there, like Supremacy, which is like the song that they wrote to be a Bond theme song that didn't
Oh,
get
really?
picked, which it is
Really?
the coolest Bond theme song. And it's not an official Bond theme song because it didn't get picked to be a Bond theme
Yeah.
song. It's so good. And like I know my brother's favorite song of theirs is Panic Station, which has this like disco kind of vibe, but also like heavy metal
Yeah.
vibe of like smashing it together, you know, channeling that Kiss disco. I was made for love. But also like I know I have not listened to a lot of Depeche Mode, so none of that connection really stood out to me in terms of their influences. But that's just because like I didn't really listen to a whole lot of that. Like that would you say Depeche Mode's new wave,
Yeah,
like
for sure.
80s new wave?
Oh yeah.
I'm not the biggest fan of
I
80s
I
music.
never listened to, I just never really listened to a lot of their stuff, you know.
So, so like that's one that definitely like I haven't heard a whole lot of, but I could definitely feel like them evolving. And one of their albums really frustrated me because like one of my biggest pet peeves about rock music today, I'm getting rock music today, is that so much of alternative rock music has just turned into, oh, did you listen to music in the 80s? And I'm just like,
Right.
the 80s had its day. Let's do something different here. And like, even like bands like Mumford and Sons, their third album sound like 80s new wave. I'm like, you had something going here that was different than a lot of people doing right now, and then you had to do the same damn crap. Even the Decemberists started doing that too. I'm like, what are you doing? You sing sea shanties and shit. Why are you making 80s new wave alternative music now? Um, but like I could definitely see those kinds of influences. And like Simulation Theory was that album where I'm just like, yeah, this definitely sounds like they just went full blown. Like I can imagine that album's probably 100% influenced by Depeche Mode then, because it just really sounds like let's go full blown. I love the 80s. Let's go back to that. And even like is the album cover is based off of Stranger Things, and all the music videos are based off of 80s pop culture music videos. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
think somebody likes the 80s.
It was,
Yeah.
I don't know, it was a very particular sound, very particular style, visually, sonically, right? Some of it
Mhm.
was garbage, some of it was really cool. I mean, I talk with people. Some of the shows that I go to are with people who are in their like 50s and 60s and like even early 70s, and they grew up with like stuff in the 70s, and they remember when everything that was analog went digital, and they say that was the end. Like for them, that was like the beginning of the end because not things didn't sound as good. The drum, and it's true, the drums didn't sound as good. Stuff wasn't as warm. And
there's a
so
there's a coldness to like
yeah.
80s music.
But bands like Depeche Mode found a way to use it in a way that it was like that sonic digital synthesizer thing that was like it coursed through you. The
Mhm.
way a fiddle courses through you and it's played just so. Like they found a way to like use it really, really effectively. But there was a lot of people who didn't use it effectively. I love Bruce, but Born in the USA is a bad example of how to use synthesizers. Like that was a huge song. It was a huge hit. It's terrible.
Yeah, for all the wrong reasons because people thought it was patriotic. I'm like, you're not listening to the lyrics, people.
Right, right, exactly, which is the biggest irony of it. I don't think he really ever plays it live. He doesn't play it live anymore. Good
Mhm.
for him, but like that synthesizer's terrible. It's
Yeah, I'm,
terrible.
I'm with I'm
Now,
with
I
you,
would
Alex. Yeah.
So,
as
I mean, the thinness of but obviously, this is a record where, wow, they've really kind of found a way to infuse it in a really cool way all those years later. So many years. The technology's better. The producers have had all the time in the world to like mess around with it, do it wrong, and like figure out a way to like fuse it in with this music. So, I mean, that's why you never want to like just throw anything out. Oh, I'm never going to use synthesizers. In fact, for this song I'm working on right now. In fact, right after I get off of this call, I got to go listen because he just put organ on it. I actually had him listen to the score of The Hitcher, the Rucker Hauer Hitcher
Nice.
from the 80s, because they used like an electronic pan flute in the score for that movie. I was like, can you try to put some of that in this song in different places? And he's like the Hitcher, like because he grew up with the Hitcher, he's like, yeah, I was in high school when that movie came out. Like, yeah, you gotta put the Hitcher in there. So we're gonna see how it works, because
Nice.
there's a special thing about the digital, all the digital sounds that you can make and use. But yeah, no, all the older folks, all the like 60s, 70s folk, they're always telling me, in 1981, it was over.
I feel
I
like maybe
ruined
they
it.
got in my ear because I felt that way for a long time about synths, but like there's a lot of 80s music that I missed out on, not at the time because I was too young,
Three.
but um, like Men at Work, for example, I love Men at Work now, and I never would have listened to Men at Work in high school.
Vegemite sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just looking at the Hitcher now because I don't think I've ever even. This movie was never on my radar. And that's also why I was asking you guys if you'd seen the band live, because I feel like Knights of Sidonia would be epic live.
Yeah. Oh, it'd be wild.
I feel I'm so mad at myself because I got rid of so many of them, but I'm not the biggest going to concert kind of person because I do not like crowds. And like I need seats. The last time I went to a concert and didn't have seats was a Black Label Society concert, and that mosh pit kept growing and growing. I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Which is like goodbye. And but like I had such an extensive concert DVD and Blu-ray collection, and I'm so mad at myself for getting rid of so many of them. I still have some. Most of them are Rush. Because also I'm never going to be able to see them.
Oh.
But well, I feel like we're kind of like waning into the end of our conversation. But I would feel bad that we talked about 11 of the songs, but not one of them that we didn't even talk about. I'm just throwing out as exopolitics.
Oh wow. Okay, that's right. That is a cool song.
And some of the lyrics in this, just like when the Zetas fill the skies, will our leaders tell us why? And then later they change that line to when the Zetas fill the skies, it's just our leaders in disguise. And this just kept making me think of the goddamn drones over New Jersey and just being like, what's going on here? And fully loaded satellites will conquer nothing but our minds.
I really liked that delivery of that line. The fact that I
Mm.
remember fully loaded satellites means it was like delivered in a way that made me go, "Ooh, I want to listen to that." Cool
Yeah.
song. I like the build. It's just distracting that did they ever sue Chris Cornell over stealing the chorus of this song for Like a Stone?
This song?
Wasn't it Exopolitics where he's like waiting patiently?
Oh wow.
I
Wait.
couldn't
I
I
am waiting
I couldn't get
patiently
away from that.
like a stone, right? I'll wait patiently. I'll wait for a sign.
Is that the
Okay.
right song? Exopolitics.
You're right. You're right. That is, but
And
I think
this definitely came out before Like a Stone did. Do you know if he did they lose out to Chris Cornell on the Bond theme?
oh did he
No, it
yeah,
would have been 2012. They lost to Adele.
That's tough competition.
So, like, to be fair, Skyfall is like iconic
It
Bond theme.
is. Yes, it
So,
is.
like, but Supremacy, look, listen to it and tell me like that doesn't sound like that would be like because it has like bum, 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 and then and it just comes down with like this bass coming in, and you're just like, oh damn. It has just so much bombast and presentation to it. And I'm just like, I remember listening to that, I'm like, this would make such a great Bond theme. And then I found out that they wrote it to be funny. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But they released it on an album that it really didn't make a whole lot of sense with, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
It's funny.
um
I'm sorry, but Jim, now I have like both songs like competing in my
I
brain. And
did
it
ruin
really,
it. I'm the worst. Sorry.
no, it's okay. I didn't catch that. That's kind of wild. So that came out in 2002. Um, wow. I
Wait,
mean,
Like a Stone came out in '02, you said?
yeah, Like a Stone comes out in '02, and
Oh,
this
I thought this
no,
came out first.
no, this came out in '06.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Okay.
but it's just interesting because the lyrics are in your house. I long to be room by room patiently. I'll wait for you there like a stone. So it's not so much that the lyrics are so similar, but the way he sings it is like, so you look back at the other lyrics here. I'm waiting patiently. I'll wait for the sign. So it's like
Hmm.
it's different enough where I highly doubt they took it on purpose, but it very could have just been like subconscious.
Yeah, one of those things where it just, it's back there in the back of your mind, and I
Yeah,
mean, if you make it made a lot of music, it's going to come out at some point.
that's why that's kind of cool. That's a pretty cool thread there.
but well, I think we had a pretty thorough discussion of
Yeah.
black holes and revelations here, but thank you both for joining me and humoring me for this amusing discussion.
Thank you, Shay.
You all are very welcome for that. So, but Alex and Jim, thank you both for coming on. Seriously, it's always a great time talking music with you guys.
Hell yeah. Hell
Thank
yeah.
you, Shane. I'm going to be working my way backwards, I think. Absolution, Origin of Symmetry, Showbiz.
Yeah,
Never,
me
never
too.
listened to those albums, so I'm gonna have to give them a shot.
Hell yeah.
But and thank all of you out there for always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.